Today is week 4 of our awesome series, Warrior. If you haven't, check out the previous 3 weeks on YouTube. It's taken by my own personal mate, Steve Hall. Enjoy it.
Great to be here. I just want to say 4 words. It's time to be brave. In other words, this is the time to put the big boy pants on and to be brave. Maybe you heard that as a kid, hey, or it's that time of the year, and I'm so glad I've graduated from this, but it's that time of the year when the little kiddies are going for that first day at school. And mum or dad have got the child and the child's hanging on tight to mum's hand or dad's hand and the parents holding on tight to the child, and they walk into that place, that huge place called the building, the education property, and they walk in and the child's thinking, oh no, what have I got ahead of me? And mum or dad are thinking, please don't embarrass me. Everyone's watching to see what type of parent I am. Don't hang on to the legs. We're going to get in there. And they get to the classroom. And mum or dad say those magical words, the words that's just going to change the whole day. Come on, be brave. As though this is some sort of secret wish or magic. And as soon as you say it, this cape is going to shoot out the back and the undies are going to come on the side of the trousers and the fist pumps into the air. And all of a sudden, with those 2 words, we're going to conquer education. It doesn't quite happen like that. But I want to suggest to you that today, it's time now to be brave. We come to the 4th part of, or the last message from this series of the warrior. And you've learnt through this series about the importance of having courage and being courageous. So you know how to be courageous now. Then you learnt that the warrior needs to be prepared. And after that, we discovered again that it's about persistence and perseverance. So as a warrior, you've got all the information. But now it's a time to get it into action. It's a time to be brave. It's a time, in the words of Nike, just do it. See, I looked up the difference between courage and bravery, especially since I was given this topic, and I thought, well, hang on, we've spoken about that. But courage is about the emotion. It's about the internal voice. It's about, I can do this. But bravery is actually doing it. See, it's one thing to know the feeling, it's another thing to put it into action. And bravery is about stepping out and let's do this. It's time to call the warrior that's within us, to call the warrior out and say, okay, if we don't get into action, we don't need courage. If we don't get into action, we don't need to be prepared. If we don't get into action, then we don't need perseverance. All of this has to be wrapped up with some action where we step out, where we actually put it into practice. You just got to get out and do it. And I believe in this season that we're living in, this world in which there is so many mixed emotions and needs are growing. It's time for the warrior from within to stand up and to rise up and to take action. The Apostle Paul, who was the guy that was a man that started the church right back there after the resurrection of Christ, and he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, and there he is, and he comes along and he's planted these churches all over the place, and he has an apprentice called Timothy. And he says to Timothy, he gives a bit of a pep talk, and we read it in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 6. It says, you could imagine this. This is Paul, and he's saying to young Tim, Tim, therefore, I want to remind you to stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying of hands. In other words, there's a gift, there's a warrior, there's something inside you, and we're going to stir it up. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, or in some versions it says timidity, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. You see, having courage, having perseverance, having preparation with no action is timidity. But it's time to be brave. It's time for the church. It's time for you and me. It's time for those in society to rise up and to make a difference. One of my most favourite movies is Cool Runnings. I love Cool Runnings and some of those crazy quotes. But in the story of Cool Runnings, which, as you may remember, was the first Jamaican bobsled team. And they're getting ready to go. They go to the Olympics and got a very poor-looking bobsled. And the team have been getting a little bit of a hard time from the other teams that are all professionals. And they go to a pub, a hotel, and they're there having a meal, getting ready for the big race. And there was a young guy, his name was Junior, they called him. He's just a little fella, and he was the son of a very wealthy man. And Junior has never really reached the heights to which his father would have liked him, and was quite timid and very had a low self-esteem. And he's in this pub, and the guys from Switzerland, who were very good, obviously, they were the champions, they're giving him a hard time. They're really stirring up the Jamaican team, and especially young Junior. Well, Junior's there, and another one who's Brenner, he's watching nearby. Now, Brenner's a big fella, and he would take on the whole lot. And he's getting upset that they're making fun of Junior. So he rips Junior out of there, takes him into the men's room. He stands Junior in front of the mirror and standing behind him, and he says, Junior, what do you see? He says, well, I see Junior. He said, no, what do you see? He says, well, I'm just Junior. And Brenner says, what I see is I see pride. I see power. I see bad, good words, mother, who don't take rubbish from anyone. And he starts to say it more and more, and soon Junior starts to pick it up, and he starts saying, I see pride, I see power, and he starts repeating it, and he walks outside ready to face the Swiss team. And he stands up in front of them, stands up tall, and ends up in a big fight, and it's just not good from there. But when I ask you the question, and I ask myself the question, when we stand in front of the mirror, what do we see? Do we see people who are struggling with all the restrictions that are happening right now? Do we see, we see other things happening, but that's not for me, that's someone else's problem? Do we see just good, honest citizens? And if God was standing behind you, I wonder what he would see. I wonder when he looked in the mirror, I wonder if he would see, I see a mighty spirit. I see a big man. I see a strong person. I see possibilities. I see something greater. Because today the question is, do you see the potential of a mighty God that lives in you? Or do you just see a timid person? We might have all these gifts and all these abilities, but unless we see them and act on them, then we just become timid. And I want to make a very strong point here that just as Paul said to young Timothy, stir it up. And Paul was quite big on that. All through the scripture, you see, he's constantly, all his writings. At one stage he says, you calls us, we are warriors with this armor, and so let's put the armor of God on, because our fight is not with flesh and blood, but it is powers and principalities. And somewhere in there we need to understand that there's a warrior spirit inside us. There's a warrior person inside us that wants to take back that which the enemy, that which the world, that which is being taken away. And when the church understands that we are more than just good people on our way with a ticket to heaven, but we're here for a purpose, and we're here as warriors inside. And I sense that there's a calling out of that warrior. You're back in the 1700s, you saw this group of people that were called the one-way missionaries. They would leave the shores of England or even America. And they were called one-way missionaries because they would go out to the mission field to help those in third world countries and to preach the truth about Jesus out in third world countries. And they would get coffins, and they packed all their clothes and all the stuff they're taking into a coffin, expecting not to return. One-way mission. That's brave. That's a brave, bold warrior move. One particular guy, his name was A.W. Miller, he decided that he was going to go to New Hebrides, and he goes off, and in this area he was going to, it was known as having headhunters and cannibals, and it was most missionaries who'd gone there didn't come back. So he got his coffin and he filled it all up, and he went over to this place. He risked his life. He allowed the warrior to rise up within him and to step out and be a brave warrior. He steps out and he goes to this place, and he lives there for 35 years. When he died, it says on his tomb, he came into darkness, and now there's a great light. I wonder if we saw ourselves not just as observers, but people that would say, okay, what am I going to do with all this that we've been talking about? I want to take you to a story of an amazing warrior that you've been studying through the book of Joshua. And Joshua is a fascinating book, and we can study it for ages. But there's one part of the story in Joshua that is absolutely fascinating. And let me tell you, you wouldn't do this unless you allowed the warrior within to rise up and make a difference. And I'm only going to read 3 verses. It's from Joshua 10, 12 to 14. Read it with me. It says, "On the day the Lord gave the Israelites victory over the Amorites, Joshua prayed to the Lord." He's got the victory, right? And it says Joshua prayed to the Lord in front of all the people of Israel. He said, "Let the sun stand still over Gibeon and the moon over the valley of Ajalon." Wow. Now, you pray that prayer in front of everybody, you want to be careful. There was something inside him that gave him the courage to speak out a prayer that just sounds like it's crazy. And this is what happened. So the sun stood still, and the moon stayed in place until the nation of Israel had defeated its enemies. See, he'd run out of time. He went, if we're going to defeat this enemy, I need more sunlight. So he prays and asks God to keep the sun still and don't let the moon come up because I need more sunlight. And it happened. Is this event not recorded in the book of Joshua? See, this wasn't just a scriptural recording. This is another book that's recorded all the battles of the ancient times, and it's been recorded in there that this actually happened. The sun stayed in the middle of the sky, and it did not set as on a normal day. There has never been a day like this one before or since when the Lord answered such a prayer. Surely the Lord fought for Israel that day. You see, it was miraculous that the sun stood still. I mean, even now, there's people who have been looking at that and wondering if that happened and trying to find evidences of that. But you see, that wasn't the greatest miracle. The greatest miracle was this, that God listened to the prayers of a person and actually did what he said. That's a miracle. It takes a bold move to ask a big God for a big move like that. Joshua expressed that warrior, that brave spirit that particular time. Seems unbelievable, yes, but it's amazing that God did answer the prayers. What actually happened in that time? Because it's kind of interesting. If you shot back to verse 1 of that same chapter, you see what's going on. See, it says, Adonai-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had captured and completely destroyed Ai and killed its king, just as he had destroyed the town of Jericho and killed its king. He also learned that the Gibeonites had made peace with Israel and were now allies with Joshua. So you could imagine this king was concerned. So what did he do? He went, let me get those other kings together. Let's get you in the same room and say, guys, we're in trouble. Because Gibeon, which is an amazing big place, has now got Joshua actually fighting for him. That's scary. So let's us all get together and let's take out the Gibeonites. Well, the Gibeon went, wow, this is scary too, because now we've got 5 guys, 5 kings against us. Let's give Joshua a buzz. So give Joshua a call. Send out a message saying, we're with you, we're together, come and protect us. So Joshua leaves the battle he's in to come down to help someone else. And I love what it says then. It says, as they were doing that, and this is the message, come and help me destroy, it goes on further and it says that what God did was God came along, and as Joshua was winning the battle, it says that God sent hailstones to wipe out the enemy, and the hailstones killed more of the enemy than what Joshua did in his battle. Let me give you 3 things that I learned from that lesson, 3 from that story that helps me look at, well, what does it really mean to allow that warrior to rise up in me and be the brave warrior that we're called to be? And the first thing I find with this story, which is very clear, is the battle was for others. You know, we're so good at fighting our own battles, aren't we? We want to look after ourselves. But when we look out of ourselves and actually see the battle actually is for others. I see this happening in the church, and I believe it's the church's call to come and fight the battle for those in our community that are broken, those in our community that are struggling, those in our communities that are isolated. Another great a video that I watched, a movie, which you may have seen too. It's a great story. It's Hacksaw Ridge. And it was about a private Desmond Doss. And he was the army medic, but he was also a very religious man. And he believed that it was wrong to kill, but he wanted to offer his services to the army. So he said, I will join the army, but I'm not going to take a gun. I'm not going to kill anybody. And so he became a medic to help others without a gun, without any weaponry. He was vulnerable. It came to a time when he was involved in probably what was the most bloodiest war of World War II. And the army, the American army was up there and they're fighting away, and many people are getting injured. Many are getting killed. These battalion actually retreated and went back. But Private Desmond decided that he was going to do what he came to do. He climbed the ridge and he went into the battlefield. While everybody else had left, he climbed the ridge, went into the battlefield to rescue the wounded soldiers. And as you see this picture of him covered in the blood of others, as he's risking his life, as he's being shot at, as the fire is still coming, he goes and he grabs a wounded soldier and he takes him down the ridge. Then he goes up and gets another one. And his comment that he makes in this movie, which stuck with me, and as he's leaving another wounded soldier down there at the medics, and he goes back for another one, he says, "Please, Lord, help me save one more. Help me, give me the energy to save one more." Private Desmond was a brave warrior. He went out looking at helping others, risking his life to save one more. 75 men were saved that day. And he was the first one, the first conscientious objector who was awarded the Congress Medal of Honor in America. That to me is a brave warrior. And I believe that that's what we're called to be, as people that will be prepared to go out and say, "God, just give us one more I can care for, one more I can reach out to, one more I could save." But not only did Joshua battle for others, it was someone else's battle he was fighting. But he battled with God. You can trust God's promises. You can trust God. He is a big God. He's a God that he can stop the sun. Why can he stop the sun? Because he made the sun. He made the world. He's a God that is much bigger than our circumstance, much bigger than our issue, much bigger than the problems of this world. He's a big God, and we battle with him. It says in verse 8, it says, "Do not be afraid of them," the Lord said to Joshua, "for I have given you victory over them. Not a single one of them will be able to stand up to you." We have a resource. We have a hope in God that this world right now needs. Where there is little hope, there's hope which is at reach right now, and you and I know that hope. And so the brave warrior within us wants to put hope at reach to those around us. I remember many years ago a story that was very real to me. I'd only just started at a particular church that we were ministering at, and I was still making my way as a pastor. And the day before, it was a Saturday, and I was mowing my lawns, and I just had this thought. I believed it was God placing this thought inside my head, which was pretty scary because at that particular stage, the church wasn't doing great financially. The race between income and expenses, and let me tell you, expenses was winning the race and the income was falling back, and we weren't looking great. And we were doing all the things, we were praying, but I really felt as I was mowing my lawn, this thought came to me. Tomorrow, give away your whole tithes that comes in on Sunday morning. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. It was $3,000 or $4,000. I think it might even be more than that. And we needed it. But there was a church up the road that was really struggling, a church that was up the road that was on the end of closing down. And I just thought that we were supposed to give them the money. Well, what was I going to do? I was a new pastor. And I'm going to go to my leadership and say, "Guys, surprise, we're going to give all our money away." Well, I rang up the chairman of the board and I said, "Do you mind if we meet together before the service?" He said, "Sure, we can do that." So we sat, I remember the little room, we sat in the room, I had the board, I had the leadership of the church, and I said, "Guys, I got this crazy idea. It came to me while I was mowing my lawn, and I believe it was God speaking to me. I think we're supposed to give away 50% of our tithes today to the church up the road." Well, the guys all looked at me and they were a little bit shocked, and so was I. And then one of them says, "Steve, I think you're wrong." And I went, "Oh, great. I believe we're supposed to give 100% away." "Are you sure?" And they said, yep. Slapped my hands off, and I went, I think you believe you're right. So that day we did this service, and we took up the offering. We didn't tell people. And then I said, this is what we're going to do today. Felt the Lord wants us to give all our offering away. So the elders took that offering. They went down to the church up the road, and they gave it to the people in the church. It was a crazy time. And I'd love to tell you that our offering doubled. It didn't. I'd love to tell you that all of a sudden the place started to explode. It didn't. But I will tell you this, we didn't go broke. I'll tell you this, that we met every one of our needs. I'll tell you this, that church actually discovered a hope which they were starting to question. And they became strong, and they grew, and they won their battle because another church was obedient to their responsibility. That's a brave move, but I think God calls us to take brave moves, to step out, because he's a big God, and he will look after your needs, and he will supply everything you need. But he wants us to step out into the battles he has in front of us. But not only do we step out with God, a God that's a big God, but we need to ask God to do the God-sized things. Oh, it's easy to ask God to do the little things. But would we ask God to do what only God can do? See, there's a lot of things I can do. There's a lot of things I ask of God, but really I can do those. But what if I ask God to do the things that only he could do? I've been challenged on that this week. Even within my own work ministry that we have, is asking God for things that just seem too big, and just believing that God will do it because I haven't finished the battle you've put in front of me yet. Jesus, just before he died, and he was on that Last Supper before he was put on a cross and he gave up his life. The warrior, brave warrior in him, gave up his life for you and I. And he's with his disciples, and he makes this comment in John 14. It says, I tell you the truth. Anyone who believes in me will do the same works I have done, and even greater works, because I am going to be with the Father. You can ask anything in my name, and I will do it, so that the Son can bring glory to the Father. Then he says it again. Yes, ask me for anything in my name. What does that mean? That when I pray, as long as I put Jesus at the end, I've got the magic formula. If I put Jesus at the end of my prayer, all's going to be good? No, when you pray in Jesus' name, it means that I am praying on his behalf. I have his will and his desire. I'm fighting his battle. You see, Joshua was fighting the battle that God had put in front of him. He was fighting with others, for others, with God. And therefore, when he asked according to the mandate of God, because he was in God's will. God wants us to step out in his will. And when we do that, we just got to ask. We got to ask and he will provide. We've got to ask and he will bring the miracles. We've got to ask. He said that. If we walk with him, if we allow God to be part of what we're doing and we become part of what he's doing, you step into his purposes, you will see his miracles. You step into those things that he has set out for you and I, you will see miracles happen. You will see Jesus sightings around you. You see the miracles ahead. God hearkens to the voice of a man who himself has hearkened to the voice of God. Love that quote. God hearkens. God listens to the voice of man who himself has listened or hearkened to the voice of God.